How dare you, sir? I slap you about the bum vigorously. That's not what I do when I hit them.
Hiya! Welcome! Records Roundup number 53, off and running right this moment, and plenty to show you again. I know how long the last video, number 52, was. I've got plenty here, but I think I should be able to get through all this quicker than I did the last lot in Records Roundup 52. That'll depend on, of course, if I can stop waffling on, like I know I'm doing now, and get going. So just to quickly preview, we've got the usual selection of great albums on vinyl. I'm going to start out with some CDs. There's also a 7-inch single, and we'll finish with a mail opening. And some of these records are some Black Friday bargains. Right then, so we'll start with some CDs. Now in Records Roundup 52, I think it was, or was it 51? No, I think it was 52, the last one. I had bought the kind of new, but it was from years ago when it was recorded, Cuban Boys 10-inch EP, the John Peel session from January 1999. And I mentioned that I'd been thinking about bulking up my Cuban Boys collection for quite some time. I've got all their singles, I think, on 7 or 10 or even 12-inch vinyl, but it's the albums that I'm lacking. Well, not anymore, and I got a really good deal with an album in particular, or it's actually more than one album, but we'll get onto that very shortly. But first I'll show you an eBay pickup. This was only about, it was less than £4 and free postage, and it's the Cuban Boys debut album, and it's really their only proper studio album, at least that came out on a major label, Eastwood. Now I did used to own this on CD, I mean it's never been out on any other format, but it was one of many CDs that I ended up getting rid of, in a way regrettably so, back in the mid-2000s probably. So this is their debut album from 2000. It was a little bit of a controversial album at the time, not for any sort of content reasons particularly, but they had to change a load of the samples that they'd used on familiar tracks that you've been hearing on the John Peel show mainly a couple of years or so previous. So this album was delayed. Cognoscenti versus Intelligentsia, the Christmas single, was out in December 99. This came out later on in 2000, and I think the delay was due to a load of samples not being able to get any clearance. Pre-owned obviously, just quickly show you the disc and the back of the booklet there. I do know this album, I had it, I like it. Always said that I would get it back into my collection at some point. I've kind of been holding off for quite a few years, hoping that it might get a vinyl issue, but it hasn't yet. So I just thought, well, I know I can pick the CD up really cheap, so I bought Eastwood on eBay, under £4, like £3.90, something like that. Then moving on to Bandcamp and to the Cuban Boys' own Bandcamp page. Now this ended up being a fantastic deal here. I picked up their greatest hits, their compilation album Art vs Commerce, for £8, free postage, direct from the Cuban Boys. It was the keyboardist Ricardo Autobahn who sent this. I know that because in PayPal it had his email address and everything. There again, like with Eastwood, I'd held off buying this because I thought, well, you never know. I suppose there's a slight chance it could come out on vinyl one day. It's got a load of tracks that I'm familiar with from the days of the Peel radio show, the Eastwood era. This came out, I think, probably about 10 years after Eastwood, 2010, I think. So £8 free postage, but that's not all I got sent. I also got sent this nice little postcard here. Now it's not a proper signature, I think that's just Ricardo Autobahn who's just wrote cheers on it, but it's still a nice thing and it gives a little bit of info about the release on. But here's the best bit, I got another free album on CD, one that I knew was out on CD, but It wasn't at the Cuban Boys Bandcamp page, only for digital download. There wasn't a physical copy to buy. Ricardo must have seen, his real name's John actually, I'll call him Ricardo, that's his stage name, but he must have seen that he had a surplus of these and they've just not updated their Bandcamp page to sell them. If they had, I would have bought this, I would have paid money for it. As it happens, I got it for free. And it's Machines, their most recent studio album. Had no idea this was coming. So I got this, the album that I'd bought, the album that I'd ordered, Art vs. Commerce, and also kind of a signed postcard as well, all for £8, free postage as well. Technically this is only a promo CD, as you can see from the little sticker there. Actually it's not a sticker, that's actually printed on. But this has only ever come out physically as a promo CD. It's not come out in any other form other than this. I don't think I've heard anything on this album either. It's fairly recent, 2017, so whether they'll release another studio album, I would have thought they will eventually. But I don't think I've heard anything on this album, and there was no one selling it on Discogs when I was doing a bit of a Cuban Boys search recently. Really happy to get that as a bonus. I wasn't expecting it at all, and I wasn't even thinking that I'd be owning this anytime soon. So to get Machines from the Cuban Boys as well. Many thanks to Ricardo Autobahn, Screen, and of course all the rest of the chaps at the Cuban Boys.
Don't be too happy. After some months of this, you'll be smacking your lips at the forest on Why don't we all relax and just get terribly friendly? Hey, you take those pants off!
Now on to a 7-inch picture disc single. Picture disc is your big clue there. If you've been watching recent records roundups, you'll know the picture discs that I've been collecting on 7-inch vinyl, and this is the latest in the re-release series from Suede. This is another Suede 30 campaign reissue, and it is what I would say their best single off their self-titled debut album, Animal Nitrate of course. B-side is The Big Time. This was from The Sound of Vinyl. There's been more of these announced. There's the fourth and final single from Suede 30 years ago that's coming out in January, unless it gets delayed, as I think it was Metal Mickey that had to be delayed for a while. This one seems to have come out on time, to be honest. And then they're also going to release Stay Together, which I think's out in February. And then I believe all the singles from the second album, Dogman Star, will be getting reissued as picture discs as well throughout next year. So plenty more to get in this series. I'm assuming there'll be a Dogman Star 30th anniversary reissue of the actual album, which I won't get because I've already got an edition of the album anyway, and I don't double up with Suede. Let's get this open briefly. I have shown these Suede picture discs before. Like I say, I've got the Drowners and Metal Mickey, and I did show Metal Mickey in a fairly recent records roundup, so this has got to be much in the same vein really. There we go. I won't bother taking it out of the protective sleeve there, but that's your A-side with the familiar Pigman on the front, and same sort of deal on the back, giving you the track listing, production stuff, and the big Suede logo. I do like these picture discs. They're not necessary really, as even the B-sides, I think I've got them all, or the majority of them that are coming out on these singles on the B-sides compilation Sci-Fi Lullabies. Having not been a Suede collector for that long, I've only really been collecting them under a year, I think. It's difficult to keep track. I've got all the albums, so you know, maybe I'm getting some B-sides I've never heard before, but I've got a feeling probably not. But regardless, I just like these as sort of collector's items more than anything. Always love a picture disc, particularly album ones, but I think these little 7-inch single ones are nice as well. Animal Nitrate from Suede. Right, now to move on to some albums on vinyl and to a bundle of 4 which were part of a Black Friday sale from a record shop online that I'd never used before. It's one that apparently, from my research, has not been open very long. They're a bricks and mortar place, but they've got a really good website as well. And they did have an opening up sale quite recently, and I was checking that out. Didn't buy anything, but then they had a Black Friday sale where they just basically added a load more stuff. Some really good stuff here on massive discounts, absolute bargains. Plus, because I signed up for their email newsletter, I was able to get an extra 10% off the Black Friday sale price. So the record shop is called Dig In Records. I believe it's in Woking, which is that Surrey? Sorry Southerners, I'm a bit ropey with my geography in that part of the country, but Surrey's ringing a bell anyway. And I'll show you these 4 albums and I'll tell you how much each of them cost as well, because I've got some great bargains here. I would say most, if not all of them, are impulsive, but the prices that I paid, I don't really care. I'm just happy to get these. So this one is Bootleg by Bad News. And this was up on the site with a big reduction to $6.99, and then I got another 10% off, so that was another 70 pence off it, so just over £6 for this. Bad News, of course, a spoof, a parody heavy metal act. They first appeared in Channel 4's The Comic Strip Presents Bad News in, I think, the early, or getting on to the mid-80s, and then there's a sequel to that. I think Bad News predates Spinal Tap, actually. Everyone always thinks of spoof heavy metal and spoof documentary and stuff like that, and they think of Spinal Tap, but I'm sure Bad News came first. These were the originators, and the better, in my opinion, as well. But I've been a massive Ade Edmondson and Rick Mayall fan for as long as I can remember. I do like a lot of the comic strip films. I think this has got relatively little music on it. It's more like a sort of comedy album that's meant to sound like just outtakes, and it's got like loads of arguments in inverted commas. You know, whether this will be anything to write home about music wise, I very much doubt, but I don't really mind. Just over £6 for a brand new album. All these from Dig In Records are brand new and sealed, by the way. There is one track on here that's produced by Brian May, but the rest of it is produced by Adrian Edmondson. So imagine the Brian May produced track might be one that's relatively musical, but I've never heard the album before. I think this is technically Bad News' second album. The first one, well, I don't know, that's probably available as a reissue somewhere. I'll get this open because I think this is the only other one to show you today that's not black vinyl, but some absolutely amazing bargains here from Dig In Records. Comes with a black inner, and it's a wonderfully clear, can see pretty much everything right through at least the run out groove, and you can kind of see things blurry through the normal grooves. Vinyl record here, great stuff. I'm looking forward to listening to this. I love the Bad News films. I call them films, I mean TV films really. They were Channel 4 productions. Edmondson and Mayall. You know, I've been a Young Ones fan, a Bottom fan, Filthy Rich and Cat Flap, blah blah blah, for donkey's years now. So anything that they're involved in, I'm on board for anyway. Bad News and their, I believe, second album, but it's not really much of an album if you actually want to listen to some heavy metal, apparently, and Bootleg.
Hey, where's all the groupies?
Yeah, where's all the groupies?
Where's all the drugs? Where's the toilet?
Hey, look out, world, you're about to witness rock and roll history.
Yeah, the only trouble with creating rock and roll history is it always takes 6 hours to set the drums up. Why is that, Spider?
Well, this time it's because I left my drums at home. No, I'm serious.
What?
I thought this lot were going to pick them up for me.
Oh, this is really great. Just imagine, I could have just done in the same bog as Eric Clapton, or Mick Jagger, or Lemmy, or Ozzy Osbourne. Who has been here? Bananarama.
We can stick with the comedy now, actually, and here's one that is a soundtrack album, and it's a soundtrack to a comedy film. It's from a film that I do like. It didn't get very good reviews, to be honest. A character who was established on UK television screens back in 2001 originally, notoriously for being the king of cringe. Eventually, when did that come out? 2016, I think, the film and this soundtrack album came out. He had a movie spin-off. I'm talking about Mr. David Brent with his group Foregone Conclusion and Life on the Road. So of course David Brent is played by Ricky Gervais. Life on the Road was the film that reintroduced David Brent to people on screen. He'd made like a couple of very brief cameos in the US office, but basically this was a return to the character that established Ricky Gervais back in the early 2000s. So it's a 2-discer, this one. The thing is, even though the lyrics are completely cringeworthy and deliberately un-PC, I did like most of the music in the film. The tracks, to be fair, they were quite catchy, really. I'll give you an example of one of the track names here, and bear in mind I'm reading what the track name is, and I do remember it from the film anyway, and some of you will have no doubt seen the film, but one of the tracks is called Please Don't Make Fun of the Disabled. So yeah, you kind of know what you're getting here. It's typical David Brent. I won't spoil the plot of the film. I think it's a funny film, actually. No, it's not as good as the UK Office, but I think it's superior to a lot of stuff Ricky Gervais has done since. But I'm not going to get bogged down in what Gervais has done in recent years that's been good or bad. That's a video maybe for another day, perhaps, if people want me to talk about that, because I am a big comedy fan, obviously. On black vinyl, 2 discs here. I'm really looking forward to cracking into this. Oh, the price. This was $9.99 and then another £1 off thanks to the email code. So $8.99 essentially. Absolute steal, I think, really, for Life on the Road by David Brent and his band Foregone Conclusion.
Oh, Native American, soar like an eagle, sit like a pelican. Indians, we're more like West Eurasians crossed with Siberians. Hey, I know, no, no, hey, I know, hey, I know, no, no, hey, I know, hey, I know, hey, I know, everyone, hey, I know, no, hey, I know, hey, I know, no, hey, I know, oh, Native American.
Next up is a greatest hits album, a compilation that's, I think, pretty iconic, really. I think it came out about a year or so originally after their album Tango in the Night from 1987. This one I've got here is obviously a newer sealed reissue. This is an album that I always said if I saw it going for a good price I'd pick it up. And I did. It's the greatest hits of Fleetwood Mac. The hype says this is an 8 times platinum collection. So yeah, basically a reissue to celebrate it going 8 times platinum. 13 tracks of classic Fleetwood Mac. So you're not going to get anything on here that's later than 1987 Tango in the Night era, but that more or less suits me. I did used to have another more recent Fleetwood Mac compilation on CD years ago, and I've still got a lot of the tracks from it digitally. Before I end up selling the CD, I would have ripped it somewhere, and it's sort of carried through legacy wise on iPhones and stuff over the years. So 1 or 2 of those tracks that are from I think 1990 are missing, but still many of my favourites on here, such as Everywhere, Little Lies, and it's got stuff from the 70s, you know, classic stuff from albums like Rumours and Tusk, such as Don't Stop, Go Your Own Way, Tusk, the title track of that album, of course, Dreams, etc. So a nice little showcase of the peak Fleetwood Mac period, really, of the sort of mid-70s to mid to late 80s, really, where they were basically a massive Anglo-American band. $9.99 for this, 1 disc, black vinyl, again 10% off, $8.99. I've never seen this as cheap as that, so had to jump on it for £9, really. The greatest hits of Fleetwood Mac.
Don't say that you love me. Just tell me that you want me.
And the final pickup from Dig In Records is the best bargain of all, certainly in relation to the price. Whether it'll be my favourite of the 4 to listen to, it might be, because I am familiar with the music on here. It's another soundtrack. I've gone from buying no soundtracks for many years really to buying quite a few now, almost in one video, but then in a previous records roundup I also showed you Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels soundtrack. But this one is actually a soundtrack to a Netflix documentary series, and this was £4.99 reduced at Dig In, and then 10% off, about £4.49, £4.50. You know, when can you get new and sealed vinyl for under a £5? And because I know this documentary, I love this documentary, I've watched it twice actually. I'm a big documentary guy as it is, but if there's one that I really enjoy, I will re-watch it eventually, and I did re-watch this. So if I've watched it for a second time, that means it's a big recommendation. I'm talking about the soundtrack to Wild Wild Country, which was composed by Brockaway. So Wild Wild Country, you can see from the hype there, it was nominated for 5 Emmys, including the Outstanding Documentary Series. There's also a download included in this vinyl edition, but I'm not interested in that. I think it was a 6-part documentary series about a kind of religious cult. They didn't really call themselves a cult, but then again, I suppose most cults don't, do they? Who moved from India to Oregon in the US in the early 80s, I think it was. And just basically controversy and attempted murder followed them around. It's really good. I can't recommend it highly enough. I've nearly reviewed the documentary on this channel before, and I've thought no, because there's so much to talk about. There's so many facets to it. It's something you really just need to watch and stick with, really. But it's so enthralling. It's got that kind of true crime element, which I love. It's got that religious, bizarro world element, another strain in documentary filmmaking that always interests me. It's got everything as far as I'm concerned. And the music on it is really good. It just works well on the individual episodes. I thought, I'm going to have to pick this up if I ever see it, and I saw it, and it was a £5 or less than a £5 with my extra code. I'd recommend the music, I'd recommend this album. I've not listened to it, obviously, it's still sealed, but I know of pretty much all the music on here just from watching the series a couple of times. So I know what to expect. There might be some stuff that maybe never made the documentary on here, I don't know. But the actual documentary, Wild Wild Country itself, is a massive recommendation for me. Please, if you've got a Netflix subscription and you've got a couple of days, because it's a 6-parter and each episode's around an hour or so, you know, so you need to dedicate a bit of time to it, but it is well worth watching. But that is Brockaway's soundtrack to Netflix's Wild Wild Country. Fantastic. What bargains we had there. I think £5 for Wild Wild Country soundtrack. Amazing. Bad News for just over £6. Excellent. And the Ricky Gervais / David Brent and Fleetwood Mac albums are £9 each. Dig In, of course, I'm recommending them. I'm not saying they've got any particular sales on at the moment, but they might still have some discounts knocking about, but certainly check them out. Anyway, I can move on to a mail opening, and this is another site, another record shop I've never used before. This one I think is rather more long established, but these also had a bit of a Black Friday sale, and confusingly, the shop in question is called Dig Vinyl. So I've just shown you some records from Dig In Records. Now there's 2 from Dig Vinyl. That's a place in Liverpool. I know where Liverpool is. before anyone who remembers me struggling over Woking says anything. So there's 2 albums in here. Oh, they've got the Dig Vinyl address on the mailer there. One of these was heavily discounted, but after the fact, and I'll tell you for why once I get into this. The other one is continuing a collection that started recently. There might be some of you who will know what I'm referring to there. So good packaging, some extra cardboard in there. Oh, now that's been separated out. I had a feeling that one would probably be pre-owned. This one, that one is new and sealed, which I thought it would be. So far so good, so I'll save that one till last. The first album to show you here is the one that they ended up giving me a massive discount on, and it's technically a sampler. It's Big Mac by Craig Mack and Notorious B.I.G. Now then, I initially paid £18 for this. It was 20, it had a reduction on it from Black Friday, and then once again I think I'd got an email discount code for 10% off. This was a Record Store Day issue from, I want to say 2020, it should say on screen I think, but it's meant to be a double format, a dual format set. It's actually meant to be a vinyl album and a cassette tape which has the exact same stuff on it. Side A has early tracks by the rapper Craig Mack, and side B early tracks by Biggie Smalls, of course, the Notorious B.I.G. So I placed the order for this and the last album to show you, and then I got an email from Dig saying, oh, we're really sorry, but the cassette's missing, so we can either refund you the entire £18 if you don't want to proceed with buying it, or we can refund you £15 and we'll just send you the record. So I said, yeah, okay, just refund me 15. So this album, I've not put it back in yet, so I'll give you a quick butchers at the vinyl in a minute, but it's only black anyway. But the album cost me £3. So yeah, there should be a cassette with it. It's not really much of a big deal to me that the cassette has gone missing somewhere. It's happened on a lot of the Discogs listings for this. I've actually been looking at this sampler, this album, for quite a few years now, and I've just never wanted to pay the full price. Sites along the lines of The Sound of Vinyl and hiphop.com sort of ask between £40 and £50 for it. And yeah, you're getting a cassette as well as a record, but the cassette has the exact same stuff on as the record. I don't really need the cassette. So for £3, it goes in my Notorious B.I.G. collection as well. That's the reason I wanted it. I thought it'd be nice to discover Craig Mack, because he's a lesser known rapper who I'm not quite so familiar with, but I think was quite important in the early days of Bad Boy Records. So yeah, there you go, there's just a quick look at the record itself. I got almost all my money back on this, apart from £3. Even Wild Wild Country wasn't quite as good value. Yeah, it's second hand, obviously. I think the cassette was like secured with some sort of sticky plastic if you get an original or a new and unopened copy of this. I only need the record, really. I'd rather have the record than the tape in this case, certainly. Some absolute bargains here today, and this one is, I would say, just for the big discount they gave. And they were quick to send these out as well. And I should say that about the previous company, Dig In Records. Didn't wait long for any of that stuff. Many thanks to them. But there is the sampler from Record Store Day a few years ago by Craig Mack and Biggie Smalls, Big Mac. And we can finish with some sheer crazy, some sheer lunacy, or perhaps just some madness, and the rise and fall. So this was £15 or $14.99 at Dig Vinyl in Liverpool, and with the 10% off code, that took it down to what, £13.50. So under my £15 and under ruling, where I only want to buy these madness reissues here for £15 or under. So the Rise and Fall is their 4th album, I believe. Who's doing the liner notes on here? It's Chris Foreman, Suggs, Mike Barson, Cathal Smith, Woody Woodgate and Lee Thompson. So it's, what is that, most of the band? I do like reading the liner notes for these madness reissues, actually. It's nice just to kind of learn more things about a band who, while I've been a casual fan of them for many years, It's only now I've actually started collecting their music full on. What songs on here do I know? Tomorrow's Just Another Day, that was a single, definitely. Our House, of course. Madness Is All in the Mind, I believe I've heard that as well. I think that might have been a double A side, possibly. So yeah, Rise and Fall, £13.50, goes in my Madness collection. I'm still looking out for more Madness reissues, preferably new and sealed, that are £15 or thereabouts. There we go, that completes Records Roundup, Madness, the Rise and Fall.
The kids are playing up downstairs, sister's saying in her sleep, brother's got a date to keep, he can't hang around. Our house in the middle of our street, our house in the middle of our house, it has a crowd. There's always something happening and it's usually quite loud. Our mum, she's so house proud, nothing ever slows her down and a mess is not allowed. Our house in the middle of our street, our house in the middle of our house in the middle of our street. Something tells you that you've got to move in the middle of our.
Thank you all for watching. I do believe that this one will be and is shorter than the previous Records Roundup, assuming I don't suddenly decide to stand here for the next 10 or 15 minutes just talking bollocks. But I've shown you all the records and the CDs, of course, that I've got today. Got more on the way. There's a couple more kind of Black Friday, I think they technically were Black Friday reductions, from yet another site who I'd never ordered from. When I saw that they had a sale on around Black Friday, I took a punt on a couple of albums, but I think they've got some ordering issues at the moment, and I'm having to wait for them, but they are keeping me updated via email, which is very good of them. And I've got pre-orders that are due any day or within the next week or two, and by the time this video comes out, I'll have no doubt got all of those and more, and I'll be well on my way to recording the next Records Roundup that I assume will be released on the channel either just before or just after Christmas itself. So I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas, especially my wonderful subscribers and generous patrons. And please see the usual links such as Facebook group and my Patreon in the description text box. But I'm going to go now with loads to choose from as to what to listen to next. Maybe start out with the Cuban Boys on CD, but I can't wait to get stuck into that bundle of 4 bargains from Digging Records, and of course the Bad Boy Sampler and Madness album from Dig Vinyl in Liverpool. And I do hope that all of you will join me again next time for my next record and music collecting video and Records Roundup. Cheers everyone. See ya!